We're watching you! Get out!
I never told anyone about what happened in that house because I knew no one would believe me. And honestly, I kept trying to convince myself that none of it was real, that it was just stress, insomnia, imagination. But the scars on my mind haven't faded, and the way certain sounds still make my skin crawl tells me the truth hasn't gone anywhere. When I first moved into the old rental house on Brooklyn Street, I was desperate. My previous landlord had sold the building suddenly, giving everyone a month to leave, and rent everywhere else had skyrocketed. So when I found a modestly priced, spacious one-bedroom home online, I jumped at it without thinking too much. The landlord, a worn-out man with hollow eyes and a handshake that lingered too long, barely spoke during the walkthrough. His voice was flat, and when he handed me the keys, he said only one thing that stuck with me. Don't go looking for things you don't want to find. I laughed at the time, because who even says something like that? But I should have paid attention. The house wasn't terrible, but it wasn't exactly comforting either. Bare wooden floors, narrow hallways, and a weird echo when you walked through it, like the entire place was hollow. The living room floorboards dipped slightly in the middle, but the landlord said that was normal for older houses. It creaked with every step, but I figured I'd get used to it. The first 3 nights passed without anything unusual, though I couldn't shake the feeling that the house was listening. That sounds insane, I know, but whenever I stopped moving, the silence felt too attentive, like something waited for me to speak first. On the 4th night, I heard the first sound. I was sitting in the living room, scrolling on my phone, when something knocked beneath the floor. Not loudly, just one soft knock. I froze. Then it came again. A gentle tap. Then another. Rhythmic, like knuckles tapping wood from underneath me. My first thought was pipes, or maybe an animal trapped under the house. I pounded my heel lightly against the floor. The tapping stopped instantly. The silence felt heavier than before. I went to bed convincing myself it was nothing. The next night, the tapping returned. This time it came at midnight, and it didn't stop after 2 knocks. It continued, slow and methodical, like someone drumming their fingers under the floorboards. I sat up in bed, listening, trying to locate exactly where it came from. It wasn't under the bedroom. It came from the living room again. I forced myself to check it out, turned on every light on the way, and crept into the living room. The tapping stopped again the moment I entered. I tested the floor with my foot. Silence. I crouched down and pressed my ear to the wood. At first, nothing. Then something whispered. I didn't catch the words. It was too faint, too airy, but it was a voice, definitely a voice, drifting up through the grain of the wood like breath caught between layers of timber. I shot to my feet so fast, I stumbled back into the wall. I didn't sleep that night either. Over the next week, the tapping became a nightly routine. Midnight, always midnight. Sometimes it was slow and persistent, other times faster, almost excited. And the voice, it got clearer, whispering in fragments, like someone trapped below, trying to talk through a barrier. I could never understand entirely, but I'd catch single words. Here. Cold. Listen. Down. But one night it whispered my name. Clear as day. Drawn out. Wrong. Like someone who'd never said a human name before trying it for the first time. I lost it and called the landlord the next morning. He responded with a tired sigh, like he'd been waiting for the call. I tried explaining the tapping, the whispering. He cut me off and said, "It won't hurt you unless you acknowledge it." I asked him what the hell that meant. He hung up. That night, I didn't make a sound. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying not to breathe too loudly. Midnight came. The tapping started. Slow, purposeful, directly under my living room again. Then the whisper followed, calling my name with a sickly sweetness, like it was coaxing me out of hiding. I kept my eyes open, terrified I'd hear it closer, but it never moved from under the floor. When morning finally came, I decided to find the crawl space entrance. I was determined to prove something, an animal, a leak, anything. The entrance was in the backyard, a small metal hatch half buried in dirt. Rust ate at the edges, and the lock was broken, dangling loosely. I opened it and shined a flashlight inside. The crawl space was deeper than I expected, more like a hollow chamber stretching far beneath the house. The air that drifted out was cold, too cold. I crawled to maybe 3 feet before stopping. There were no pipes, no animals, just dirt, and perfectly smooth wooden beams stretching across the underside of the floor. Too smooth, like the floor wasn't built, like it was sealed. Worse, in the center, directly beneath where my living room was, the wooden beams sank downward, forming a shallow bowl-shaped dip. That was where the tapping came from. The bowl was discolored, stained with something dark, old, and soaked into the grain. I scrambled out fast, brushing dirt off my clothes, my heart going crazy. That night, the tapping was louder, more demanding, like it was angry I'd gone underneath. I tried sleeping with headphones on, blasting music, but around 3 a.m., the tapping synchronized with the bass, matching the rhythm perfectly like it was copying whatever it heard. I ripped the headphones off, shaking. The house felt wrong, alive. Every breath I took felt like someone was breathing with me. That's when the whispering changed. It wasn't muffled or distant anymore. It was right under the boards, so clear I could make out every word. "Let me in." I backed into a corner, staring at the floor as the voice grew louder, angrier, scraping the edges of speech as if clawing its way through the wood. "I know you hear me." I cover my ears. The voice laughed. Not a normal laugh. More like the sound of someone choking mixed with amusement. "You shouldn't have looked." I ran to my bedroom and slammed the door, but the voice followed me, not just through the floor, through the walls, through the vents, through the goddamn air. "You saw me." My heartbeat was pounding so hard I felt dizzy. I pressed myself against the bed frame, shaking, crying, begging the thing to go away, but it kept whispering, its voice curling around me like icy fingers. And then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The silence afterward was worse than the noise. A stillness so complete it felt staged. The next morning, I packed a bag and called a friend, begging him to let me stay over. He agreed, no questions asked. Before leaving the house, I forced myself to step into the living room one last time. I had to see it. The floor was slightly warped now, the dip more noticeable, as if something beneath had pressed upward. But that wasn't what made me run out the door. What made me run was the fact that the wood was breathing. The boards rose and fell in slow, deep motions like lungs filling and emptying. The wood pulsed, and faintly, beneath the rising surface, something shifted. It was trying to push through. I slammed the door shut and left without looking back. I stayed at my friend's place that night, but I didn't sleep. My phone buzzed around midnight. A text. No number. No name. Just a message. "You can't leave the floor behind." I never believed in hauntings, demons, or anything that couldn't be explained by common sense. But what happened to me last winter changed that forever. I've tried to frame it logically 100 different ways, but every explanation I come up with collapses under the weight of what I saw, what I heard, and what I felt following me through every room like a hungry shadow waiting for me to notice it. Even now, as I write this, I keep glancing at the doorway to my hallway, half expecting to see that thing standing there again, its head tilted too far to one side, as if asking me why I told people about it. This all started on a Thursday night, the kind where the cold feels sharp enough to cut skin. I was coming back from work, exhausted, irritated, ready to shut myself in my apartment and drown myself in leftover takeout. My building was old, creaking pipes, flickering lights, thin walls, but it was cheap, and I'd learned to tune out the usual noises. Or at least I thought I had. When I reached my door, something felt wrong. Not wrong in an obvious way. No broken lock, no scratches, no signs of a break-in. But there was this strange pressure in the air, almost like the hallway held its breath the moment I stepped into it. I brushed it off. Everyone gets a weird feeling now and then. I unlocked my door, stepped inside, and the first thing I noticed was the smell. Not a strong smell, but something faint. Damp, metallic, like old water sitting in rusted pipes. I walked around the apartment, checking windows, checking the kitchen, the bathroom. Everything was fine. But the smell clung to me, following me from room to room, never fading, only shifting slightly like whatever caused it was moving too. The night passed quietly until around 1:30 a.m. I was in bed, half asleep, when I heard something. A soft tap, then another. A slow, rhythmic tapping like fingernails clicking against wood. At first, I thought it was my neighbor, but the walls were silent. Then I thought maybe it was the radiator, but the sound wasn't metallic. It was organic, too deliberate. It was coming from inside my room. I sat up, heart pounding, staring into the darkness where the sound came from. The tapping stopped instantly, like it knew I was listening. I reached over to switch on the bedside lamp. Warm yellow light filled the room, and for a moment, everything looked normal. Too normal. Nothing moved. No shadows shifted. So I told myself I'd imagined it. That's the thing about fear. It whispers the stupidest reassurances just to keep you from losing your mind. I turned the light off and lay back down. Maybe half an hour passed before the tapping returned, this time directly beside my bed. I shot upright, grabbed the lamp switch again, and saw nothing. Just the same empty patch of floor, bare wooden boards that creaked under my feet just fine, but made no sound now. I barely slept that night. The next morning, the smell was worse. It had transformed into this thick, rotten stench that made the back of my throat sting. I tore the apartment apart, trying to find the source. Every cabinet, every corner, every vent. I even checked inside the walls behind the removable panels. Nothing. And then, as soon as I stopped searching, the smell faded back to that faint, damp metal scent. Like it was mocking me. I went to work irritated and tired, but work was a welcome distraction. There were people around. There was noise. There were bright lights and conversations and movement. No tapping. No smell. I stayed late just to avoid going home, but eventually I had to go back. This time, the moment I stepped inside, the lights flickered. I sighed and hit the switch again. The bulbs hummed, buzzed, and steadied. I try not to think about it. I heated up leftovers, sat down to scroll on my phone, and for a few hours, everything felt almost normal again. Until the power died. Not the whole building, just my apartment. I knew this because the hallway light under the door was still glowing a soft yellow. But everything inside, every lamp, every outlet dead. I stood there in the pitch-black living room, holding my breath, listening. And in that thick silence, something exhaled near my ear. A slow, raspy breath, too close, too warm. I stumbled back, knocking over a chair, and scrambled for my phone flashlight. When I turned it on, the beam cut through the dark and hit nothing. But the smell was there again. Strong, wet, metallic. The power came back on a few seconds later, but something had changed. I could feel it. The air felt heavier, charged with something cold that settled into my bones. I barely slept again, and when I did, I dreamed of standing in my bedroom doorway, staring at my own sleeping body. Something tall and wrong-shaped lurked in the corner behind me, its limbs stretched too long, its fingers brushing the ceiling. I woke up gasping, unsure if I dreamed it or remembered it. Days passed. The tapping became nightly. Always close. Always stopping the second I turned on the lights. I tried recording it, but whenever I hit record, silence. Sometimes the tapping would be replaced by something else, scratching like long nails dragging across my wooden floor in slow, lazy arcs. Other nights, it sounded like someone whispering just outside my door. More than once, I opened my eyes and saw a shape standing over me. A dark silhouette, featureless, tall, its head tilted too far to the left. It would vanish the second I moved. I thought I was going insane. But the worst night, the night I realized this thing followed me home, came exactly 8 days after the tapping first started. It was a Saturday, I remember, because I had nowhere to be. I tried staying out, sitting at a cafe until it closed, pretending everything was fine. When I got home, the hallway was dark. Not dim, pitch black. The light bulb must have blown. I used my phone as a torch and walked slowly toward my door. That's when I saw something on the ground. Wet footprints. They started 3 feet from my apartment door, like someone or something had appeared there out of nowhere. The prints were long, narrow, too long to be human. Each toe mark was sharp, like claws pressing into the floor, and they led directly to my door. I should have run. I know that. But something about the dark hallway made me feel like going anywhere except inside my apartment would be worse. So I unlocked the door with shaking hands and stepped inside. The smell hit me first. It was overwhelming, thick, suffocating, like the air itself was rotting. I gagged and flicked the lights on. They worked, but that didn't make me feel better, because the footprints continued inside, over my wooden floor, across my living room, stopping at the hallway that led to my bedroom. I moved slowly, every part of me screaming not to look, but unable to stop myself. The closer I got to the bedroom, the colder the air became. My breath came out in small, white clouds. I pushed the bedroom door open. Nothing. No footprints on the carpet. No shadow. No figure. Just my room, cold and silent. My phone buzzed in my pocket, nearly stopping my heart. It was a message from an unknown number. One sentence. I'm in the dark. The moment I read it, the bedroom light went out. I screamed without meaning to, stumbled back, and flicked the hallway light on. It stayed on. I sprinted to the living room, grabbed my keys, and ran out of the apartment, not looking back. I stayed at a cheap motel that night. The next morning, I went back with a friend to get the rest of my stuff. The house I live in now wasn't supposed to be permanent. It was meant to be temporary, a cheap rental, while I save enough to move somewhere better, somewhere newer, somewhere without history. But this house had history in its bones, carved into the floors like grooves left by fingernails dragging in panic, whispered into the cold drafts that drifted through the hallways at night, hanging in the air like something unseen waiting to speak. The first thing I noticed when I moved in wasn't the creaky floors or the stale smell of dust, but the window in the hallway. A long, narrow window beside the bathroom door, frosted but with just enough transparency to see vague shapes and light through it. It was odd because the landlord had said the house only had 4 windows, all facing the street or the backyard. But this one faced neither. It faced an alley that didn't exist. Behind that wall was supposed to be the kitchen cabinets. It made no architectural sense at all. When I pointed it out on move-in day, the landlord's expression tightened, like I'd exposed a secret he'd hoped I wouldn't notice. He said, "Don't worry about that one," far too quickly. And then, as if regretting his tone, he added, "Just keep the curtain closed. You won't want to see what's on the other side." He laughed afterward, pretending it was a joke, but his eyes never matched the smile. I should have asked more questions. I should have known something was wrong the moment he said that. But I was tired, broke, and desperate, so I let it go. The curtain was a thin, off-white fabric, old, frayed at the edges, hanging limply from a rusty rod. Behind it, the glass glowed faintly, like there was a streetlight on the other side. But when I checked outside that night, the side of the house was pitch black. No lights, no alley, nothing but blank siding. The first week passed uneventfully. I kept the curtain closed, mostly because the window creeped me out. Every time I walked past, I felt like something was standing on the other side, inches from the glass, breathing quietly, patiently, waiting for me to open it. On the 7th night, at around 3 a.m., I woke to a soft tapping sound. I thought it was rain at first. Then I remembered it was the middle of summer, clear skies, no storms. The tapping continued, slow, light, rhythmic. I got up, confused, and walked into the hallway. The tapping grew louder, more distinct. It was coming from the window. My skin crawled. I stared at the curtain, barely able to breathe. The tapping stopped. The curtain moved, only slightly, like a breeze touched it. But there was no breeze. The air was still and suffocating. I took a single step back, then another. I went to my room, shut the door, shoved a chair under the handle, and didn't sleep again that night. In the morning, I convinced myself it was just settling wood or maybe a branch brushing the siding. Logic always feels safer under daylight. But that night, the tapping returned. This time louder, more insistent. And when I crept into the hallway, the curtain was bulging outward, like someone was pressing their face against it from the other side. The impression was faint, blurred, but unmistakably human-shaped. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. And then, slowly, the shape on the other side tilted its head. I felt something cold wrap around my spine. I fled to my room again and stayed there until sunrise. That morning, I made a decision. I needed to know what was behind that window. Needed to. I went outside to the side of the house where the window should be. But there was nothing. No window. No frame. No indication there had ever been one. Just a solid wall. I pressed my ear to the siding. For a long moment, nothing. Then, faintly, I heard it. A whisper. Inside. I jumped back so hard my heel hit a rock. I scrambled away, shaking, and didn't go near that side of the house again. That night, The tapping started the moment the sun went down. Faster, harder, desperate. In between the taps, a faint scraping sound, like fingernails dragging across glass. I tried ignoring it. I turned on the TV, blasted music through headphones, anything to drown it out. But around 2:45 a.m., something else happened. Something worse. I was in bed, half asleep, when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, careful, bare feet on wooden floors. My heart hammered in my throat. I strained to listen. The footsteps stopped outside my bedroom. I held my breath. Silence. Then the faintest whisper. "Let me see you." The voice wasn't outside my door. It came from the window. The one that shouldn't exist. The one behind the hallway wall. Something started scraping against the interior side of the glass, like fingernails searching for a weakness. I stayed frozen until dawn's light crept under the blinds. I didn't open the door until the birds outside began chirping. The hallway was empty. The curtain was still, but the air felt different. Used, like someone had been standing there for hours. The next day, I called the landlord. Tried explaining everything. The tapping, the footsteps, the whispering. He interrupted me with a long sigh, like he'd been expecting the call. "You didn't open the curtain, did you?" I told him no. He whispered, "Good, don't." He hung up before I could ask anything else. That night, I sat awake with every light on, too scared to blink. Midnight passed. 1 a.m. came and went. No tapping, no footsteps, no whispering. I almost started to relax. Until 3:03 a.m. The exact minute I'd heard the last time. A single knock. Loud, sharp, not tapping, knocking, on the glass. Then again, harder. The curtain shook like something had struck it with force. I covered my ears, but the sound seemed to come from inside my skull. The knocking turned into pounding. Violent, urgent. And underneath it, a voice cried out, not whispered, cried. "Let me out." I don't remember moving. But suddenly I was in the hallway. My hand was inches from the curtain. Inches. Something behind the fabric moved, like two hands pressed flat against the glass. 5 long fingers. 5 on each side. 10 fingertips pressing so hard the curtain dented around them. I stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet. The pounding stopped. Instantly, the fingers slid downward and vanished. The curtain fluttered once, then went still. The silence afterward felt like a hell breath. The next day, I invited a friend over. Told him the house felt weird, and I needed help diagnosing the noise. I didn't mention the window. When he walked into the hallway, he paused. "Dude, what's that?" I froze. "What? That window? Why is it there?" My stomach dropped. "You can see it?" He frowned. "Yeah, it's right there. Kind of creepy." Until that moment, I had a horrible suspicion that maybe the window was something only I could see, that it wasn't real. But he saw it too. He walked up to the curtain and reached out to touch it. Before I could stop him, he flicked the curtain aside. I screamed. He screamed, and the house seemed to gasp. Behind the curtain wasn't glass. There was no window, just a narrow tunnel carved into the wall. A pitch-black tunnel stretching deep into something impossible. The wood around the opening was splintered, clawed from the inside. My friend staggered back. What is that?" I grabbed the curtain and threw it shut. The moment the fabric covered the opening, the tapping returned. Soft at first, then louder.